Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Krall, and today I'm going to be talking to you about sadism and just pure evil. For this is the final part of the Dark Triad and Quadrad series, the topic that turns the Dark Triad into the Dark Quadrad. But before I get started, could you hit that like button for me? That really helps. Thanks. Now, sadism is something that is less frequent than the other three, which are, of course, known as the Dark Triad, and are much more common and thus more commonly spoken of. But sadism is significant enough that they expanded the theory into the Dark Quadrad to include it. And sadism is linked with psychopathy, as you will see. So people who are on the ASPD spectrum, who tend to be more psychopathic, will tend to be more sadistic as well. But what is sadism exactly? Well, as you may recall, one of the things I've spoken of repeatedly on this channel is how women like to look for the strongest man they can find and find his vulnerabilities and use them to make him weak and submissive so, they can exploit him and just suck his life force and livelihood until he has nothing left to give, and then discard him, leaving him all used up and dead inside. And they literally take pleasure in doing so. Some women relish in their ability to break a man's heart, and not only that, but break down his sense of identity while doing so, and taking everything she can take from him, leaving him in ruins. It makes them feel good to have that kind of power over someone, to be able to take a big, strong alpha male and turn him into a weak, little subservient beta male, and then into a pathetic, empty shell of a man. And how a man who used to be able to pick her up, she can now walk over and kick to the curb. The narcissistic psychopath enjoys lording their superiority over people. And the best way to do that is by taking advantage of and hurting others for your own gain, or just for plain old entertainment, which is where it becomes sadism. And these women will go as far as to brag to their friends about their exploits, or make TikTok videos about them. Because you see, some people are just purely fucking evil. And yes, that includes women, especially women. Even the ones who may seem, sweet and innocent. Even the ones who may seem traditional and conservative and moral and such. Some people are just evil. They are what are called sadists, which means that they enjoy inflicting pain upon others. All right, that emotional or physical pain in others registers in their brain as emotional pleasure for them. So they literally delight at seeing others suffer, especially if they are the ones causing the pain and suffering. That is what is most pleasurable for them. In fact, many of these people cannot sexually even be aroused or climax without inflicting pain upon their partner. In the BDSM world and kink community, sadism is the sexual counterpart of masochism and is only practiced upon the willing in what is called sadomasochism, where there is a sadist who gets pleasure from inflicting pain and a masochist who gets pleasure from receiving pain. All right, and together they practice sadomasochism consensually. However, in the real world, it is not always as such, and many sadists are psychopaths who enjoy inflicting pain upon the unwilling, and having it be consensual would just spoil the fun. In fact, I've had a number of women tell me as a man that they do not want to have to ask my consent and want to be able to do just anything to me, which, includes acts of dominance and, striking, or in other words, when it's unwanted, violence and sexual assault. And these women are psychopathic sadists, which is why they want to be able to do these things without asking and have me actually react naturally as though I have just been violated, because that's what they want. They do not want to have to consider me as having boundaries that they have to respect as a man, and have to, regard me with humanity and think about my feelings. All right. So, that is why consent would spoil the fun for a real sadist, who is an actual evil type who does not care about ethics, because it would just ruin the fun for them and defeat the whole purpose of what they're doing. So many sadists are also rapists or other, forms of sexual predators or sex offenders, either a traditional rapist or potentially someone much worse than that. These are the types of sexual deviants who will become kidnappers and murderers, and will kidnap someone and tie them up and torture them before killing them, maybe even making a fucking snuff film about it or something. And yes, these things do happen in real life, more than you might want to realize. A sadist's real life can be very much like a horror film, and horror films are often based upon the true stories of real life exploits of sadistic psychopaths. But keep in mind that it is not always physical pain that we are talking about here, that a psychopathic sadist might want to inflict upon you, but also much deeper emotional traumas that can lead to a lifetime of mental torment. Many sadistic psychopaths will use the dark art of psychological manipulation and warfare, such as gaslighting, to drive a person mad and cause great emotional turmoil and suffering for them, even driving them to self-harm and suicide at times. And sadistic bitches love playing mind games with the feelings of men that they seduce and make fall in love with them, and causing emotional reactions in them. It arouses them and gets them off to be able to have that sort of effect on someone. Sadists do not care that they are doing something that is morally wrong. They want to hurt others. They want to violate taboos. They want to behave in an immoral way. All right, that is part of the excitement and fun for them. So there's no trying to get them to empathize with you and be compassionate or sympathetic. Remember, your pain is their pleasure. They know who they are and have come to accept their darkness a long time ago, and may actually even be proud of the fact that they are evil. You see, these people get high off of wicked acts against others. It is how they get their dopamine and adrenaline fixes and other hormones that make them feel the way they want to. They need to see and hear others suffering and ideally be causing it. And many a gold-digging, monkey-branching whore is very proud of her ability to consistently use, abuse, discard, and leave men in ruins. It makes her feel powerful and good about herself, superior to these men. The suffering of her victims gives her a much-needed boost of serotonin and thus self-esteem, which they cannot produce for themselves without causing others pain. Though this pain they wish to cause you may not only be emotional, for many psychopathic sadists, they may wish to do you physical harm as well. They may wish to really physically hurt you, or even do permanent physical damage to you and leave some sort of a mark on you. Or they may wish to bring you into ruin and totally destroy you. Some women really get off on doing that and will literally campaign against a guy and try to completely ruin his life, which they can be quite successful at through any number of nefarious means over time. And trust me, there are some really truly sick, twisted, evil, sadistic cunts out there who are just as dangerous as your male psychopathic serial killers. And there's slews of true crime podcasts about these types of women and plenty of horror stories to prove to you just how evil women can be. So again, you really have got to be careful and play it safe and protect yourself by turning on your heel and running at the first sign of any sort of wickedness or sadistic tendencies. If you see her laughing at others' pain or telling stories about it, as if it is entertaining or something like that, especially if she's the one causing the pain, that is a sure sign she is a sadist. And you'd better run, motherfucker, before she eats you whole, slowly and painfully, laughing at your suffering every step of the way. For the sadist is an actual she-devil, and your blood, sweat, and tears is her drug of choice. And they will milk you for all you've got if you let them. So protect yourself from evil, sadistic bitches. Use your intuition and do the right thing for yourself. Don't let them suck you into their trap with their seductive sexuality. If a woman's doing things sexually like getting rough with you without your consent, or doing things like slapping at you or smacking you during an argument, undermining your masculinity, trying to make you feel weak and inferior, exploiting vulnerabilities, right? And then, of course, laughing at your pain. These are all signs that she is a narcissistic, psychopathic, sadistic fucking cunt that you need to run from, even if you've already made commitments to her. Because sadism and psychopathy and physical violence, I mean, that is the worst of the Dark Quadrad. But of course, all of the traits of the Dark Quadrad generally go together, and you're going to see them all at different times in different situations and scenarios. And unfortunately, the thing about the Dark Triad and Quadrad is that if you have to interact with and deal with them at all, that means that in the best case scenario, over time they're going to start rubbing off on you and infecting you with their dark ways. For in order to protect yourself and defend yourself against them, you're going to end up having to adopt similar tendencies. So there's really no positive potential outcome of interacting with them, even in a best case scenario. You're either being victimized by them or becoming like them in order to stop them. So the only way to stay safe that actually works is by staying away from them. Just as how the only way to protect yourself from an STD or unwanted pregnancy 100% is by not fucking the bitch. So just make sure you've seen all of my videos in this series on the Dark Triad and Quadrad, as well as the 4 videos I did previous to this on female predators, manipulation tactics, and gaslighting. All of which are linked for you below, as well as another on how to detect a psychopath. So between all of those, you have all of the information you need to look out for psychopathic, predatory people. And the bottom line is to always stop for red flags. Not doing so is like not stopping for a red light when you're driving or a stop sign. You know, there's a good chance you're going to get hurt when you do that. So even if you're not dealing with a sadist or psychopath who could physically hurt you, there's still a lot of damage a narcissistic sociopath can do to your life with their Machiavellian tendencies. The best case scenario in dealing with one of these is you protect yourself from them by fighting fire with fire, and in adapting to their own traits in order to fight them, you become like them. And once you've done that, you yourself become immersed in this psychological darkness, which is a very unpleasant way to live. So this is why it is so important to avoid these types totally. There is no positive outcome in dealing with them. There's no way to prevent them from affecting you without at the very least becoming as dark as they are. And this is why it is just so important for you to stay away from them no matter what. Even if you're in a situation in which you feel you really need this person in your life, like they're a boss or God forbid a family member, well, guess what? That's actually even more reason to get away from them by any means necessary, because they're going to use codependence to make sure they get you dependent upon them so that they can use you as a social utility, as, you know, however they want to. So you must get away from this type of person by any means necessary once you have seen the signs, even if it means becoming homeless. I actually did that with my son's mother, who was a Dark Quadrad type, who basically broke me down over time through seduction, manipulation, pregnancy entrapment, and then, you know, things like gaslighting and psychological warfare and isolation and other means of breaking down my mental health, my sense of identity, including physical violence, which she did, you know, once in a while, like not so routinely that it would get me to, you know, leave for good, but you know, it was somewhat routine. And eventually the psychological and physical abuse became so bad that I realized, you know, it was affecting my mental and physical health so bad that I couldn't stand it anymore. and it was making me literally physically ill, causing all sorts of disorders because of the constant cortisol that was being released in my brain. So I realized I had to get off of this dark path and go down a different path by any means necessary. So I chose to leave her home. She had taken all of my money. She'd taken basically, everything that I was worth. And so my only choice was to go and become homeless for a while and go through the system to get back up on my feet. And I did that. I spent 3 months homeless in the winter rather than continuing to live with a Dark Quadrad person, because I could see where that was going. I was getting so physically and mentally ill that I was really better off dead. And, it wasn't going to get better. It was only going to get worse. Things only get worse with these types of people. If they say they're going to change, if they say things are going to get better, don't believe them, all right? It's all empty promises and future faking. So please do not forego my warnings. It is so important that you steer clear of these people. Do not let them take you down those dark paths. But now lastly, of all of the dark triad and quadrad traits, narcissism is the most complex and complicated and in-depth issue to try to understand. And it's also especially prevalent in modern women, even the ones who aren't psychopathic or even sociopathic are oftentimes narcissistic. So I'm actually going to be following up this series with another series just on female narcissism and some of the different aspects of it that I would like to address. So you can stay tuned for that. But otherwise, that concludes this talk and the entire series on the Dark Quadrad. I hope I mansplained that well enough for you guys out there. Thanks for listening, and be sure to share your own thoughts and opinions and stories of your experiences with any sadistic, evil people by commenting below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and share these messages with everyone by sharing the video on social media and talking about these things too. And lastly, check out the links in the description below for other resources for your masculine personal development and living the life you want to as an independent man. And if you can afford to donate, please do so with the PayPal link below, because your support funds me doing this work and fighting the good fight for men like you. And you can stay tuned for the next video coming out soon, which will be on the paradigm of female narcissism. And make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified when that is. And until then, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.